Vidyadan Foundation for Education, in collaboration with Society for Integrated Development of Himalayas, organized a seminar on Indian perspectives of education from 20th to 23rd September 2012.
That Mrs. Sunanda Ali could do that, who also happens to be his wife. Now Sunanda Ali and Shri M, both of them have been part of Krishnamurti Foundation for a certain number of years, both of them. And they have taught there, and if I'm not mistaken, Shri M has also been a trustee of the foundation. And Mrs. Ali has been teaching.
It's a 6-year-old school. It's called the People Grove School. It's a residential school which is about 1.5 hours away from Tirupati. It's run under the auspices of the Satsang Foundation, which also runs 2 other schools. One in Madanpalli, it's a free school for children of the Lambadi tribe and also for SC and ST children. And another very small school which we've just started, which is quite into the interior. I think there's only 1 bus in a day and all that, and we've just started it. It's got about 30 children. But I would like to now concentrate on the People Grove School because that is where I am based. And this is, like I said, we've started it 6 years ago. This is a journey which I've been on, and some of the other people who are working with me, who have been with me from the beginning. And as somebody had said, the journey is important. If you have a very clear idea of the goal, that may not be all that important. What you discover for yourself, about yourself, through the journey is the most important thing. As we've gone along, we have had to change our ideas very often. We have had to learn from each other. But I think we've all grown through this process. I would like to just tell you a little story. Just a few months before we started the school, some people in Hyderabad told us, nobody knows about the school you're starting. Why don't you just come and talk to some people about it? So we were there, and I'm not used to talking to people, and I just didn't know what to say. I mean, we all have this idea in our heads, but it's difficult to explain a dream to someone. And I had this newspaper in my hand, and I said, I have this newspaper in my hand, and today's headlines talk about, the kind of things which goes on in our parliament, or the kind of crimes you read about every day, and all those things. Now, if I'm an adult and I'm a teacher, I have the responsibility of telling students that this is what reality is all about. At the same time, I must give students the strength to go on to their future. I have to give them the strength to dream. So it is about the present, it is about the future, but like we have all been talking about, it's also about the past. It's about the heritage which we have. No human being, I've realized, can exist in a cultural or spiritual vacuum. We are in some way related to our past. In some way we have it in us, a conditioning. We've just been hearing about it. And we have to discover for ourselves how to relate to this, to our past, to our future, with respect, but also with a very keen critical awareness. And I would now just like to tell you about the various educational practices we carry out in our school, and I hope that through this you'll get some idea of the educational philosophy. We do encourage questioning of all kinds. Teachers are told that it would be a good idea to start a class with a question, hopefully a very large question, to whom the question should be open-ended. It need not have a right or a wrong answer. It would be nice if it's a question to which the teacher himself or herself does not have an answer, so that in the process of trying to find out what may be the various answers, you discover things along the way. Again, as has been said, it is not the answer which is important. It's keeping the question in your minds, going home with the question, relating something else to it. And in that process, you come across all kinds of dimensions which were not there for you a little while ago. So I think, giving students this kind of mental space that, otherwise I remember when I was in school, the teacher would ask you a question, who knows the answer to that? And then everybody would, some kids would raise their hands and then very quickly, okay, you tell me, you tell me, you tell me. I think obviously that's not the right way to do things. We also believe a lot in teaching by direct experiences. One example is when we had done this project for students of class 8. We are in a rural area surrounded by villages. This was a month-long project where they had to go to the surrounding villages, all within a radius of about 12 kilometers. And they had to do surveys, they had to speak to the villagers about all kinds of things, about the jobs they held, about the kind of aspirations they have, what were the dreams which they have for their children, their food, their festivals, their music, their dances, a whole lot of things. And in the process, they used to do that in the evenings, because you see, these are all small farmers, so they work on the fields during the day. And only when they came back to their homes at night, then we would all go and we would ask them the questions and all that. It was very interesting that in one particular village, it was like a festival. We were greeted with food and flowers, and everybody was sitting around. And then in one village, we had it happened to be that some folk singers had come on that day, so everybody learned some singing. But the point is that children learnt about that, and I would like to read what two children said about this. One child said, "Even though initially I thought that villages were poor, after the visit I learnt that actually they are not poor. I think that living in a village is better than living in a city." Another boy said, "It is good that we went to villages following different religions, because we were able to get different answers to the same questions." Now the point is that we were able to open up different perspectives to the students. And most of our students come from urban backgrounds, from families who are quite well off. And there's a huge rural-urban divide. We all know that. We felt that this was a very, very valuable learning experience for them. And dialogue is also highly valued. We want our teachers to be open to questions of all kinds, accessible to students. And we all know that in the philosophical tradition, whether it is Socrates or whoever, dialogue is terribly important. And in the process of dialogue, you may come across the truth. I'm sure you've all read Amartya Sen's The Argumentative Indian. According to him, this is a skill which we have lost through the years. The skill of being able to logically and creatively engage with another mind. Now, 6 years ago, like I said, this was a journey. Before we actually started the school, a group of, the teachers got together and we sat and we talked about what we felt were the key things we wanted in our school. And we had a workshop, and we came across, we hit upon 3 qualities. And later on we called them the 3 C's. And we thought creativity, cooperative learning, and critical thinking, we thought were the 3 qualities we wanted to emphasize. And generally we tell our teachers that these are the things which you keep in mind when you design your lessons. When every lesson should be designed with at least one of these qualities in mind. And when you finish a unit, when you want to sum it up, then you give students assessment exercises. And these assessment exercises should ask for all these qualities. So there would be learning groups, cooperative learning groups. Children are always encouraged to talk to each other, to ask each other questions, to learn in groups. They should obviously use their critical thinking, and they should do something which is creative. And an example is that recently one of our history teachers was teaching about the Vedic period, and he asked these students, these were also from class 8, he asked these students to design an experience for an audience. The audience were students of class 7 and 9. design an experience so that they would get an idea as to what life was really like in the Vedic period. And one of the groups designed a play where a young Shudra boy wanted to learn the Vedas from a rishi. So he asks his mother, and his mother tells him, you know that this is not done, you know that we are not allowed. And he says, let us go and ask the rishi. On the way to the rishi's cave, abode in the forest, there are various villagers who come and tell them, this is something which is not done, why are you doing this? But the young boy persists. And the rishi happens to say that if you come with the right spirit, I am willing to teach you. The students who did this came up with their learning that in the early Vedic period, the caste system was not as rigid or stratified as it became later. The idea of hitting upon this caste question was not something which was given to them by the teacher. This is something which they themselves felt was an important thing they had to think about. I was looking at that, and what made that experience really poignant for me was that, like I said, we have a free school in Madanpalli, and sometimes we get students whom we feel would benefit from coming to our school. They are sponsored by other people, and there was this girl who belongs to one of these scheduled castes, and I was told by her earlier teacher that one day she just could not take it any longer. She came to her teacher and said, why is it that we are treated like this for no fault of our own? And to see that girl in this kind of a situation where they were actually thinking about these things was a very poignant experience for me. Now, human beings act, but they also need to reflect, and for reflection, we need spaces. We have talked a lot about this. I'm sure most of the things I say are things we have all heard about, so it's nothing new. Also, I'm not saying that this is the best way to do it. Actually, I feel that, teachers, like I think Manisha had said it yesterday, that teachers from different schools should go and spend time in each other's schools so that they learn about how things are done in other spaces, so that they learn about somebody else's perspective. I think there should be some kind of an exchange program, Teachers should have sabbaticals and things like that. But coming back to the need for spaces, our school is situated, like I said, in a rural area. Behind us is a reserve forest, which is really nice because we can use this space for, trekking and people just going and, looking at the trees and all that. And I think Padmini will show us a few pictures. This is the area behind our school.
Can you switch off these lights?
I have very few photographs, just to give you a sense of
They
what
are
the
very
place is
beautiful
like.
and the colors are not showing.
Yeah. This is an exercise where they had to, it's just an exercise where they had to set up a shop and sell things. This is a chameleon, and the boy is, actually looking at it. And the three of them looking at another one. You can look at the expressions on the boys' faces. I'm sure if at that time they had had a lesson on reptiles, it would have stayed with them for the rest of their lives. This is something they would always remember. This is a celebration we had during Onam. We always, celebrate these harvest festivals. Thank you. So I was talking about the outdoor spaces, but obviously the need for inner spaces is as important. And we start our day with what we call the homeroom period, where the class teacher is there. And at that time, children are, encouraged to either, sit quietly or talk to the teacher in small groups. It's not structured at all. And this is the time where children would, think about things which matter to them. Now, there is a very beautiful Zen story which I just remember. Some of you, I'm sure, would have heard it. It's about a monk, and in the monastery, he listens to the song of a bird. The song of the bird is so beautiful that he goes outside to listen to it. from a close-up. And he goes outside, and the song is so beautiful that he gets lost in it completely. And he's, almost taken out of himself. After a while, the bird stops singing. He comes back. And when he comes back to the monastery, he cannot recognize anyone. Things seem to have changed. And he realizes that 25 years have passed. The point there is that this quality of attention, or the quality of listening, is such that it can transcend time and spaces. And I think we always need, as teachers, to have that possibility in our minds, to give that kind of opportunity for this kind of experience for our students. I think that would be the primary, duty of the teacher. Obviously, you need space for reflection. That is also where this, which contributes to the growth of the discerning intellect. People have called it the buddhi, to actually think about what is good for you, what is merely pleasurable in the short span of time, or what would really help you in the long run, what would help other people around you. We also try to keep, bringing up questions every now and then. What is it that makes us happy as human beings? Isn't it that when you're born a human being, you have to somehow share the burden of all mankind, whether we want to or not? We have to. What is the difference between wants and needs? You want something, but you may not need it. Is it possible for us to think about it? And we like to think that we encourage simplicity in food and dress and all that. But again, all these things cannot be imposed. It's just that we keep these questions alive and not let them die down. I'm sure you've all heard about this marshmallow experiment. Have you? Okay. There's this very famous experiment in education. This was sometime in the 1960s, where small children aged from about 3 to 5 were placed in an empty room with a plate of marshmallows in front of them, very tempting sweets, and there was a camera there, and the camera was watching. And the children were told that if you don't eat a marshmallow for 15 minutes, at the end of 15 minutes, you will be given the whole plate. Okay? And all these children were watched. One child, as soon as the person was out, the psychologist was out of the door, grabbed it and started eating it. Another child, I've seen some of those video clips, they're really interesting. One child kind of, pulls her hair and closes her eyes and, does all kinds of things. She doesn't want to look at the marshmallows. And she's able to wait for 15 minutes. Another boy, he looks at the marshmallows and later on, he says, now he's an adult, and when they asked him, he says, I remember that. I was told for 15 minutes you don't eat a marshmallow, and at the end of it you can get all. So I thought, why not eat it all now? So he eats the whole thing. Now the point is that these children have all grown up, and they're now, I think, in their late 40s, and these psychologists have tracked them. And they have discovered that the ones who were able to wait were the ones who feel, not that they are successful or not successful, we can't say what success is, but they are the ones who feel some sense of achievement. They have had something they feel happy about in life. They were able to wait, they were able to reflect on what was important or not, they were able to delay. So this delayed gratification of wants is something which we in society should really think about, because now in this age of EMIs and all that, you want something and it's immediately there. And of course, there's all these qualities of being able to think, to wait, to reflect on what is important or not is, using a very old-fashioned word, it is character. We used to call it character, and the word character really now is, a little bit gone out of fashion. But Swami Vivekananda said, in this context I would like to read, the ideal of all education, all training, should be this man-making. But instead of that, we are trying to polish up the outside. What use is polishing up the outside when there is no inside? The end and aim of all training is to make the man grow. Now, this is a boarding school, and obviously, any school is a community, but a boarding school more than day schools. And when you live in a community, what is most important is that you live together with affection, with respect, and with hopefully with a sense of empathy. And this is something again which we keep alive all the time. So, we have designed our spaces outside so that, like you can see them here, these outside, these benches and things like that, where children can sit and talk. Little spaces, where children can sit, and if an adult is sitting, they can go and speak to them. And it is important that these things, are not imposed. It has to obviously come from within. And it is clear to me that the primary duty of the teachers is to see that the atmosphere of the school is such that it encourages empathy. And particularly in this day and age, it is very important that we are able to listen to other people. And a community is really that, because students come from all kinds of homes. Teachers come from different parts of the world, different parts of India, and they are able to relate to each other. We do encourage self-discipline. We don't have a system of reward and punishment. If a child transgresses a rule, then what we do is we ask the child to come and, do you want to talk about it? And an alternative mode of action is suggested to the child. Next time if this happens, it would probably be better to do this rather than that. Obviously, here the most important thing is the relationship between teachers and students. And students, children, to them the teacher is the most important thing. Even adolescents, when they are at that rebellious phase, at that point of time they don't feel that they want to listen to the teacher. Even then the teacher is very important. And if the teacher says something and does another, then they are called hypocrites. They are very vociferous about that. Now, obviously, the teachers have to see to it that all the time they live what they are trying to teach. In fact, I think if teachers don't say anything at all about what we normally call morals and ethics, it's probably better. If they just live it, it's the best possible thing. This is one area where, we go by the letter and not by the spirit. We have moral science lessons, or teachers tell students you must respect elders. And it doesn't make sense to students. Principal leadership. In this day and age, it's only something we can dream about.
Some time for people to
Yes. I'll just finish very quickly. So I think I've said that we start every day in the morning with a chant from the Rig Veda, and it just means that sitting together, we try and understand each other, and that is the spirit really which we would like to bring about in our school. So my talk was entitled An Approach to Learning, but of course there's no difference between learning and living. So I would like to call it An Approach to Learning and Living in the People Grove School. I would just take 5 minutes to read a document. This is when, again, we had a teachers' conference, and all the teachers were asked, what do you think would be the right ideal learning environment? And this is what we came up with. It's a very short. And this is what all the teachers said. I mean, all that I did was to get all the sentences from there and put it together. The learning environment is such that both teachers and students learn from each other in an atmosphere which is caring, friendly, and free from fear. In an environment which is conducive to joint exploration between students and teachers, students can give free rein to their questioning and feel joy at the sense of discovery, which awaits them at every step of the learning process. Student-led learning ensures that students do not stop questioning as they grow up. Teachers who are passionate about their work, loving to all, and sensitive to each and every student's capacity, as well as his/her background, are always available with a variety of mediums and materials so that children can learn and grow by hands-on activities, a process which makes all lessons meaningful to the child. Multi-dimensional teaching and learning methods empower the child to explore all avenues which interest him or her. The process of learning is joyful and free, and any student's disabilities does not hamper this process. Skits, artwork, other activities develop confidence and a positive attitude in the children, and their presentation skills are adequate to convey their joy at their moments of discovery. A peaceful, calm, and unpolluted natural environment allows students to grow naturally and learn about themselves and their surroundings. In this situation, they would absorb the lasting lesson that being a good human being is as important and as highly valued as academic or sporting achievements. Like I said, this is an ideal state, and obviously I don't know if any school will ever get there, but the point is to keep the possibilities always open enough.